Well, let's do the other side of the Elvis Presley story. This time talking about Priscilla. Let's talk about it. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium's movie review of Priscilla, the newest film from director Sofia Coppola. So Priscilla is, of course, the story of Priscilla Presley, and how she married Elvis Presley at a very young age. She, of course, is played by Cailee Spaeny in this film, and it's basically the averse of the Elvis movie that came out last year, where it's a much more small character piece, very kind of toned down, not as rampant and overzealous and stuff like that Baz Luhrmann is known for doing. But this time we have Sofia Coppola basically showing us what it was like for a young woman who was 14 years old when she met Elvis Presley, until how she kind of grew up in this world that, was not very good to her, to be fairly honest, but somehow she stayed, and of course she had a kid named Lisa Marie Presley, and how she dealt with Elvis Presley herself. And this is the kind of other side that we don't get to see very often, to be fairly honest. And that's what the story is. It's about Priscilla Presley, how she grew up in this world with Elvis Presley, and how it became very, very toxic and very kind of abusive in a lot of respects. So the one thing that always comes up when you talk about Elvis is the fact that he met Priscilla Presley at a very young age, but we never get to see films about Priscilla Presley's character or who she is. Very often, it's usually focused on Elvis because he was the bigger person, he was a huge celebrity, so on and so forth. But the idea of Priscilla Presley has never been kind of what I would call in the limelight. Once again, she was very young when she married Elvis. It was a very tumultuous relationship and stuff like that. And so Sofia Coppola coming into the mix to do a film like this is kind of a relief, because we get to see how truly kind of degrading it was for her. Whether, once again, this is a film, so there is liberties taken. But I think that I was interested in this film on the simple fact that I think Sofia Coppola is a very talented writer. So therefore, I thought she could do a really nice job of giving us kind of the nuts and bolts of what happened to Priscilla in the 10 years that she was together with Elvis. So here we are. We have a film that is now coming to the theaters, and it's one of those films that has been garnering a pretty good audience and pretty good praise and stuff like that. I heard Cailee Spaeny was, of course, really good in this movie and stuff like that. So with that said, for my honest review of this film, it's a pretty good film. I think it's actually the second best film Sofia Coppola has done outside of Lost in Translation and maybe Marie Antoinette, because it really feels like a toned down, stripped down version of this world, where we see this woman just having to go through some perils and having to feel dejected and kind of not loved, even though she truly loves this man. And he comes off like he loves her, but you see kind of the unfortunate nature of what Priscilla had to go through, how she was, always felt like she was being abused. And once again, there is a lot of probably some liberties being taken to make this a film, but it does feel authentic, and it does feel, because it's also co-produced by, of course, Priscilla Presley, like it's giving us the unfortunate nature of who Elvis was. He was a guy that was being manipulated by a particular individual. He was an individual as a superstar, and he never felt like he had time for Priscilla, and that shows it really, really, really well in this movie. And it shows us the kind of abusive nature that she kind of went through as an individual who was very, very young, who kind of fell head over heels for somebody who was never going to truly love her like she wanted. And therefore, I think Sofia Coppola does a really fantastic job of presenting that. It also feels like how her mind operates, where it feels like a lot of like a fantasy. So there's that kind of fantastical feel, like they use a lot of smoke in the world to make it more hyper realized and stuff like that. And it's just a really fascinating thing to see. And Cailee Spaeny is really fantastic. It's once again, I don't know if she's gonna get nominated for an Oscar, but it's an Oscar nomination performance because of how good she is, how much she has to carry this movie on her shoulders, and how much she has to represent who Priscilla Presley was. Because I guarantee you, Priscilla Presley really kind of showed her the nuts and bolts about her mannerisms, how she talked, how she presented herself, how quiet and reserved she was. And you watch as this Priscilla character kind of wraps herself in the world, how she feels like she's being controlled, how she has to do things a certain way, but she feels loved because she's getting all these things. It's substance over heart and stuff like that when it comes to like the nature of what she is being presented. And on top of that, we see like the start of the drug use and all that stuff. So it's a very unfortunate thing, but it's a very kind of what feels like a realistic approach to a character that, unlike what Elvis did last year. Is it perfect? No, I think it's a little dull in a lot of places. I think it could have been a little more snappy. It's how I feel sometimes when films are pretty good, but they don't move quick enough. They feel like they're just kind of settling and just kind of sitting there for a while, but it doesn't take away from the fact that the movie's still pretty good and Cailee Spaeny is really good. And I think Jacob Elordi, who plays Elvis, does a pretty okay job. It's a really interesting thing to see that Jacob Elordi is a very tall individual and Cailee Spaeny is a very small individual when it comes to size. So there's that like weird dichotomy of like height weirdness, and I don't know if that's something that kind of was a thing with Elvis and Priscilla, but it really feels kind of like almost like they picked an individual who was towering and kind of forceful and kind of that giant character compared to like maybe that's what Sofia was going for, was create this like gigantic human being so that everybody like kind of looks up at him, and it kind of feels like it's like a disjointed affair and stuff like that. So that might have been what they were going for, but he does a pretty good job. I mean, everybody does a pretty decent job, and once again, this is focused on Priscilla, so you don't really hear a lot of the Elvis songs. You just see him at Graceland or you hear him on the phone, and it really kind of puts in perspective that Elvis just wasn't a very good individual that was being manipulated, and it kind of shows that sometimes what you see on the surface is not necessarily what you see on the kind of inner surface of the world, and therefore I think it does a pretty competent job. And with that said, it's pretty authentic when it comes to like the look and feel. Graceland feels really well realized, and the world feels really well realized. It is a little creepy, the fact that he was like 24 years old and he was kind of hitting on a 14-year-old, which once again, it was like the 50s and 60s, so things were way different, but it feels like the parents were like way too happy to give her away for somebody that didn't really feel like they should have. But it is what it is. It's like I said, it's not like the worst thing I've ever seen when it comes to that, but it's the unfortunate nature of the true story of what it was. So overall, once again, I enjoyed this film. I recommend it. I think it's a lot more interesting than the last year's Elvis was. But once again, going in, it's going to put a stain on who Elvis Presley was as an individual. So there you go. But anyways, with that said, that's my take on Priscilla, the newest film from director Sofia Coppola. Thank you so much for watching. Comments below. What do you know about Elvis? Are you interested in seeing this film after seeing last year's Elvis film? Let me know in the comments below. But otherwise, if you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at top to find what's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button. And as always, we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out.